All right, and here we go, back again. So,
So
where do you want to
we
begin?
said so.
Yeah.
Where do we want to begin today? Um, so it's another week. Um, there's been a lot of developments since we last talked.
Yes,
The the Trump administration continues to go up, seem to be intentionally trying to un deconstruct or destroy the rule of law and the checks and balances in the United States. What comes to mind is the Justice Department indicted the Southern Poverty Law Center for allegedly funding hate groups, even though their only purpose is the SPLC. Um, Sorry, my dogs are barking. Um, their whole goal is to dismantle hate groups, and they paid supposedly this group, the basis of the indictment is that they defrauded the fundraiser, the people that donated funds, by not disclosing that they paid funds to informants that were within groups like the KKK. Um, what else has happened? Comes to mind.
well, we won the war in Iran again.
Oh yeah, we won
Yeah,
the war in Iran.
again, yeah, for the fifth time.
Or the Strait of Hormuz is open. Actually, it's interesting because I had seen I get the home delivery of the New York Times on the weekend, and I looked at the first, like the top story, which is on the upper right side of the paper, and it says the Strait of Hormuz is open. And then I looked at the actual website for the New York Times, and that had already changed. So within that short period of time, uh, the the Strait of Hormuz had reopened. And actually, what was interesting to me is that there's some commentators that saying the Iranian government is more open or more transparent. They're more trustworthy in terms of what they say than the Trump administration.
I believe that.
Like the Trump administration is saying one thing and then they're changing the next day. It's like a completely different. Uh, like they're supposedly there was going to be a ceasefire, right? But then Trump is like, well, we're going to keep up with the blockade. And then the Iranian government's like, no, that wasn't part of it. And then they closed the strait down again. So, but the at the end of the day, it just continues to get worse and worse. On my end, it continues. There's like one thing after another. Like they're trying to um, make it harder for people to get work permits. Immigrants are getting work permits. I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but
I mean, it
um,
definitely does sound like a big deal.
yeah, I mean, no, it's like there's supposed to be. It's just it's a continuous mirage. Like I see colleagues of mine who are just gonna quit because they just can't handle it's too depressing for them. It's too, like, every day you're dreading. It's like you go into work and you're dreading what's next. Um, because as an immigration lawyer, the law, I mean, it's a bigger immigration law is a microcosm of what's going on nationwide. But within the context of immigration law, the Trump administration has systematically eliminated illegally and legally the the legal avenues for immigrants to stay in the United States. And it's just a depressing time. I think you had said it's just depressing. I forget what context you said that, but
I was saying that I
um,
don't trust my government anymore at all. Like zero. There's any goodwill is basically gone at this point. And
so what?
it's not even because of Trump. It's really it's more about the people that surround him, like the sycophants. I actually have a bigger problem with them. Because the thing is that the whole system is set up that it's like, just in case some crazy asshole tricks everybody and becomes the president, he can't do anything crazy because there's all these other things that stop him. Except all of those things are failing. None of them
But
are doing.
it's not just the sycophants. It's also, I guess, like sycophant adjacent.
Yeah,
For example, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and basically the vast majority of Republicans in Congress, they really don't seem to be. it takes something like the murder of U.S. citizens in Minnesota, or the Trump posting as Jesus for anyone to take notice, or uh, going after the Pope. I mean, the rebukes are really mild. Like Senator John Thune, I think, did have a comment on the dispute with Pope Leo, and his response was, "I think the government should the Pope." I forget his specific words, but it was very mild. He said that Trump should just let him do what he should do. The Pope should do what he has to do. Like it was a rebuke, but it was very mild. So
Right.
there's almost no um, resistance, and it's so obvious. Like the guy, you said you both sent me a picture of him of Trump with some tennis team
Yeah.
that won a championship, and you're
Georgia,
like, what is
Georgia,
this
uni.
represents? Yeah, because he was in front of everyone,
Yeah.
and he just I was just looking over his True Social, and he was posted a 2004 or 2007 article about his show on The Apprentice that got a good review. So the question is, these sycophants, okay, they're one thing, but then there's the whole entire Republican Congress. Why do they just continue to go with the flow? Is it just they don't care, or is like this systemic apathy?
I think it's maybe more the latter. I think for a lot of people, they're just like, well, whatever, it'll be over soon, kind of thing, as opposed
Yeah,
to the what they should take, which is there's irreparable damage being done. It's like this is gonna sound stupid, but like going back, I think about like I always think about it in terms of like this, like if Donald Trump were a person that like I knew in real life, like say we went to high school together or we went to college together, I feel like I would have hated him. Like just think of like the way he is as a person, and I'm being serious. Like he constantly lies. He changes. He'll tell you one thing one day and then something else the next day. He inserts himself into every situation. I mean, obviously he's like he has a lot of friends. I'm not trying to say that, but like I don't. He doesn't come off to me as like a good person in any meaningful way. I mean, I even think going back. Do you remember like in his first presidency there was that thing with like the hurricane? I always think of this, and it was like the weather service said it was like going to go this way or something, and he said it was going to like go north. I forget exactly what it was, but he said it was going to do something else, and then they were like, "No, that's not what we said." And then he like drew on the thing with a Sharpie to like show that he was right, and he was like showing it at the press, and it was like so obvious that it had. I'm like, this is the type of person who they need to be right at all costs. They can never admit when they're wrong, even about something stupid that doesn't matter. Like he can't even play it off and just be like, oh, yeah, I don't know. I was just no. He can't. Like he has to be right, even when he's wrong. I find people like that to be insufferable. You can't talk to them. You can't teach them anything. And I don't. Not that I know everything, but that's the point. I acknowledge that I don't know everything. I try to listen, to what people are saying and take it in. Whatever. I don't think he does at all. And maybe
no,
I'm
I don't think so.
maybe I'm wrong, and maybe if I knew him personally, it would be different. But that's not the impression that I get. You know.
I mean, absolutely, I think that he's never apologized for anything. The closest thing you'll get to an apology is that I'm doing a podcast. I'll talk. Very disturbing. Okay, I'll call you later. Okay, bye. Bye. Whenever the kids call you can't hang up. I always try to answer her calls, even if I'm in the middle of a podcast.
Hey, it's important. I understand.
Yeah, so no, I think the closest you'll get to him doing anything is taking something down, but like the question is like the sycophants. Speaking of sycophants, did you see the Atlantic report regarding Kash Patel's drinking allegations?
No.
So yeah, there was an article from the Atlantic that spoke with something like 20 unnamed uh, FBI sources, like anonymous sources, and
Right. Right.
they had these specific allegations that he was so drunk sometimes that they had to use a battering ram to knock down the door to get in, because he wouldn't wake up, and that he just gets drunk and like obliterated, and he's because of that he's unavailable for many times. I didn't. It's behind a paywall, so I didn't read the specific the entirety of the article, but I got the gist of it that he's basically got a serious problem with alcohol. And Cash Patel, I think 2 days following the publication of the article, sued them for $250 million for defamation. So that should be interesting though, because when that first happened, when I first heard about that, I looked it up because I was like, well, I heard it on NPR. I heard the reporter being interviewed on NPR, and it was shocking allegations, right?
Oh yeah,
And
sure.
I looked it up, and it was just the Atlantic article. And then after he filed the lawsuit, then like the New York Times published an article about the lawsuit. So then it got bigger.
Right.
It's been more out there. So it should be interesting to see whether, because now there's going to be discovery. So the Atlantic is going to be able to determine if this is in fact true that he's uh, got a serious problem with alcohol. But if you, even apart from what's in the article, we do have public record of him chugging beers with the U.S. men's Olympic national team. Do you
Yeah,
remember that?
I do, which I thought was kind of silly. Also, I don't really understand
Yeah.
why he was
But the guy,
involved in that, but
if you look at him, like I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's true. I mean, and his response is just to call it the fake news, but they don't actually substantively respond. So what if he is getting blasted? Like he's the FBI director. I don't know. I feel like the FBI director shouldn't really be able to get drunk. It, it's like a liability
I
to
mean,
get like shit faced drunk.
yeah, I probably agree. I mean, I guess it's like, what he does in his personal time to some extent. I suppose you could go along that route. But yeah, certainly not if it's bleeding into his work time or if it's affecting his job, definitely. However, I also agree with you. Anybody that theoretically, because, like it's the same thing like law enforcement, military, whatever, like you theoretically could, or like firemen, right? You theoretically could have to very suddenly work at any point in time. So you realistically should never be intoxicated. Like I certainly understand, and especially at that level. Like if you're the director of the FBI, it's very feasible that you could get a call at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. There's something you need to take care of. You shouldn't be
Yeah.
intoxicated. But
Well, I mean, there's other things too. I just saw that the FBI, with regard to Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, that the FBI had started an investigation into a New York Times reporter for allegedly violating federal stalking laws when they were reported on his girlfriend using Secret Service SWAT teams for personal protection. And thankfully, they didn't go forward with the investigation, but they seriously consider it. Like the FBI expended resources, agents' resources, on investigating the reporter for the New York Times, like checking her background. Like they did an initial probe into her to see if they could get anything going. But basically the reason that they did that is because they didn't like the article. They didn't like the substance of the article.
right.
So that's a recurring theme with that indictment against SPLC. Um, and I think you mentioned in texts about the what's going on in Florida with the new assignment of a prosecutor. They're going after John Brennan,
Mm-hmm.
the former CIA director. So they just continue to go after their political enemies, and including there's still, the currently what's in the news is the pending nomination of Kevin Warsh for the new chairman of the
Fed
Federal
chair, yeah.
Reserve. Yeah, and the only thing that's holding that up is Senator Tom Tillis, who has said that he will not vote for his confirmation until he knows for sure that the investigation into Chairman Jerome Powell is resolved definitively. And the Trump administration continues has I think Trump has specifically said that he will not he will continue to investigate. And I read an article by Andrew McCarthy of the National Review who said that he believes that they're continuing to keep it open just as kind of because they're angry that the Fed was able to quash subpoenas with the district court. So it's kind of like this vengeance. There's this deeply throughout this first 2 years of this new term. There's this deep seated malevolence. Like they really go after people that they don't like, and it's the only reason is for like personal. vengeance. It's like you got me, I'm gonna get you. Trump says, "Oh, John Brennan investigated me. I'm gonna indict him. John Bolton criticized me. I'm gonna go after him." Jerome Powell won't lower the interest rates. And I don't think it's just that he didn't lower the interest rates. I think it's the way that Jerome Powell does not kowtow. Like he's the
Yeah.
opposite of a sycophant. Like when he speaks in public, he's no nonsense. Like he doesn't go into detail. He says like the bare minimum, and he doesn't kiss Trump's ring. He's just very matter of fact.
Right.
Almost everyone else kisses his ring or they're an opponent, right? And it's alarming that this is still going on. Where's the accountability? He went after former FBI Director James Comey, Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York for patently ridiculous, like the crimes don't exist. And the one against James and the one against Comey got dismissed, and but they don't care. Like they don't like, oh, they don't this government and the sycophants that surround him, including the new acting attorney general, who I think is in some ways worse than Bondi. I think he's more competent as a lawyer, but he's just even more corrupt, perhaps, because he knows better.
It
Um,
doesn't care.
doesn't care. They're just thugs. They're thugs, and they have the most power. They're in control. They have the reins of the most powerful government in the United States. That should have people on the streets like screaming, like, "We need to get this guy out of here. This is an imminent threat to the Republic of the United States." And just in case there's any counter argument to that, the counter argument would be something like, well, maybe they did commit a crime, so they should investigate them, right? Maybe, okay, so James Comey wasn't like this whistle clean guy, like, or Letitia, I don't know whether there was a crime or not, but then you look at other people who are close to Trump, look at his pardons. He pardoned the ex-president and convicted drug trafficker. I mean, this guy was convicted of smuggling tons of cocaine to the United States. Juan Orlando Hernandez. He was serving like an obscene amount of prison time in the United States. And he pardoned him, no explanation. I think maybe because the Biden administration convicted him. But you have these really patently evil people that have been pardoned.
And some
And
of them
it's
have
and
done
then
the same thing.
and then go for the January 6th, the January 6th defendants or the people that were all pardoned, like several of those people that were pardoned who after they were convicted, I don't know if they were serving prison terms, but they're definitely on the radar. They they've committed like horrible. Some of them committed child sex abuse crimes.
Yeah.
Like why? Maybe that person could have still been in prison and under probation. I don't know. They could have been under probation or supervision. I don't know if that specific defendant had terms um, because it wasn't that long ago. So maybe he was under probation. I don't know. Once he got pardoned, I guess that all got thrown out. So then he was free to do whatever he wanted, and he committed child sex crimes. So it's just that's one of the most disturbing things. It's just the lawfare, which for people that don't know, lawfare is basically using the the government is using legal mechanisms to conduct war against their political enemies. It doesn't have to be the government. It could be if, like, for example, if I decided to sue somebody who's a billionaire and decides to sue somebody with a frivolous lawsuit, they could still get their achieved goals and bankrupt somebody through legal fees alone. So, what do you think should happen regarding in the future once the Trump administration is gone regarding these obviously political prosecutions? It's just when you say political, it's more like persecution. Like this is the U.S. government is persecuting, like under the refugee definition, it's persecuting its own citizens on account of their political opinions.
I mean, I guess if he's gone, theoretically, even if they put people in jail, I suppose the next president could pardon them, you know? But I think part of the problem is this deep tribalism that seems to have permeated everything. You know, it's like people don't care as long as it's their side. And like,
Right.
not everybody is like this, but enough people are that it's a problem. You know, like you're gonna have people that react the opposite way, and like, you know, if the Democrats win next time, it's going to be the same thing. Oh, you know, they're just going to do it the other way. Like they're not. In other words, a tremendous amount of power has now been put in the executive branch, way more than should be there. But do you honestly believe that if the Democratic Party takes over next time, that they're going to just give that power back or make it normal? I don't trust them to do that. Maybe they will, but I don't trust them to. It would take an extraordinary person to do something like that. You know, like a
No, I
president that
think
actually genuinely cares about the United States and its future. And I don't think we have anybody like that in politics at this moment.
no, I don't think. I mean, it could go the other way. It's not saying that somebody like Trump could exist on the other side of the
Yeah,
ideological spectrum. Because
absolutely.
when you think about, that's the thing you said, the tribalism is that the what Trump's trying to do, like the authoritarian part, the destruction of the checks on power, kind of just ignoring federal courts or systematically trying to get away with violating the Constitution and other laws until someone says otherwise. That is not partisan. That exists in autocracies and totalitarian regimes across the ideological spectrum. Look at Cuba. Look at Venezuela. On their surface, those governments were leftist, socialist, but at the end of the day, there were there are socialist elements like healthcare and subsidized fuel, but they're very in terms of freedom, the rights of their own people, it's indistinguishable from a right-wing government like Russia or uh, well, China, not really right-wing, but any other right-wing autocracy. So I think that's what people don't. I think a lot of Americans take for granted um, their their rights, the Bill of Rights that they have, and unfortunately, it looks like it's gotten to the point where we have to suffer the consequences before we do anything to reclaim that, right? So I think the on the upside is that, and we'll find out in the midterms, is that Americans, if they really destroy if the Democrats just have a rout in Congress, in the Senate, and the House, then that will show that Americans are like, well, we don't, hold on, pump the brakes. We don't want this. But the question is it too late for that? I mean, I think in many ways it is because the factors that led us to this moment have there's serious flaws in the system that can be exploited again in the future by somebody else. And just one example that comes to mind is the shadow docket that the Supreme Court apparently, there was that interesting article in the New York Times where um, it looks like it was it was John Roberts didn't like the new rules that Obama had implemented, and he decided to just this time maybe we'll do this emergency decision, and we won't even wait for the lower courts to hear the evidence. We'll just make a presumption that it's unlawful because it's really important that we don't have these companies, whatever the reasons were. But
Right.
it was a break in precedent, and now fast forward what a decade. It's only been a decade, right? Was that 2016? It wasn't even that long ago.
Yeah, wasn't that long ago.
So this is kind of a precipitous acceleration in the. Um, it's ironic though because that was on its surface an attempt to curtail the executive branch's power because it was regarding Obama's implementation of regulations regarding, I don't know, was it greenhouse gas regulation?
Yeah, something about the
So,
environment.
so it was a check on the executive, but then now, same Chief Justice, um, now under this government, it's been used by the executive branch to expand executive power by leaps and bounds. Um, so basically, in my opinion, without a constitutional amendment or I think it would require a constitutional amendment because the Supreme Court is an co-equal branch of government. So Congress couldn't pass laws to regulate the Supreme Court. But I think that there should be. I think it's not. I don't think this is really discussed a lot in mainstream media. Is we should have start with the Supreme Court because they're a really important component. They're the check on they're the main check, one of the two main checks on the executive branch. Congress obviously is helpless because it's so partisan, right? But Supreme Court is many ways kind of above the law. Like they're not even subject to the Freedom of Information Act requests. So that whole thing that we read about in the shadow docket, and I'd be interested to hear your perspective as someone who's not a lawyer. What did you think about that article and how it came about, like as a lay person, so to speak?
I mean, to me personally, I find it to be scary. But I didn't really know until conversations with you. Like I assumed that whenever the Supreme Court made decisions, that everything was written out. Their decision was written out like a normal case. A normal judge writes out, whatever their decision and why. It's usually many pages long, even in stupid cases that seem unimportant. So I always assumed that that was a thing that took place. It wasn't until I spoke to you about it. I don't remember how long ago we first talked about it, and you said that no, they don't have to write their decision at all. And I remembered thinking even at the time, like I think that's really bizarre because the whole point of the Supreme Court making decisions is that it sets precedents, right, for the courts to follow, right? Lower courts then
Nationwide,
follow.
and it like they're the final arbiter on what the Constitution.
Right.
It's the
So
interpretation of the
how do you
Constitution.
expect judges and lawyers in lower courts to understand the law if you don't explain your decision? If you're just like, "Oh, yes." How is that in how could you expect the lower courts to interpret that in any meaningful way if there's no decision written? Like to me that's the biggest reason why it should be explained. Not to mention the fact that you were saying like political that it's part of the Congress is way too partisan and whatever, but as soon as that tribalism leaked in, the Supreme Court was always going to be like that too, because the Supreme Court nominees or the people are appointed by the president. So it's very easy that system right there is very easy to corrupt. It's not difficult.
Yeah, I think the tribalism is kind of accelerated too in the last decade because in the Supreme Court specifically because just from recent memory, some of the more liberal justices were actually David Souter. He ended his term, um, and he was considered a liberal justice, but he was appointed by Ronald Reagan. And then there were other judges like Anthony Kennedy. He was more independent minded. He wasn't so tribal. Like he wasn't keen on. I don't think he was as keen on giving such unfettered access to uh, the executive branch, and even but nowadays it's just um, yeah, it exceeded. So that's the question. That shouldn't they be constrained? At least like the whole idea. What bothers me most about the shadow docket is not that the lower courts can't um, don't know what to follow laws. Is their decisions impact hundreds of millions of people and their
So
rights in the
true.
United States, including you and me. And as a U.S. citizen, as someone living in the United States, how dare you make a hugely consequential decision and not even bother to explain or justify your decision, and then by in effectively keeping secret the reasons, like now they can use race. The Supreme Court in one of those shadow docket cases, they decided that they would overturn a lower court that said the ICE could not, that ICE was specifically violating the U.S. Constitution and indiscriminately stopping people based on race. And then the Supreme Court said, in effect, well, we're not going to issue a written decision, but we think that these lower court is probably going to, it's not going to, they're going to lose their case in the end. In this case, it just begun. It hadn't
Right.
even seen all the facts yet. So how dare you? Like they act like they're these gods, like these kings, like these kings in these robes. Like we can do whatever we want. We're gonna write that article in New York Times is fascinating, not just because of what it was about, but that it took 10 years for the public to even know
Yeah,
about how it began. Like these messages between justices about these deliberations on whether they should like grant a decision in the shadow docket. There's a reason they call it the shadow docket. That should be public.
should. I agree.
Why not? I mean, I guess the only other argument is like there should be some kind of protection for deliberations. But when you undermine your own integrity or credibility, which is the Supreme Court, I think, has done with this shadow docket on both ends of the political spectrum, because let's be honest, they get flack from both sides when they issue a decision that the other side doesn't like. That still goes on. But I think one of the reasons they get flack from both sides is not is legitimate, is that they don't explain themselves sufficiently or at all, and they should. And I only, I've done a lot of FOIA, and the executive branch is subject to that, and it's a usually important law that allows the public to see what the records supporting what the executive branch does. And I think the Supreme Court should be subject to that as well. And there should be a constitutional amendment that requires them to issue written decisions and not to like really severely restrict their authority to use the shadow docket, because there's a reason that like 100 almost 100% of the cases have to go through the regular process of going through the district court, then the U.S. Court of Appeals, and then finally, after the record is full, like we're talking about litigation that could take months and years, that the Supreme Court at the end is an appellate court. It's not a so that should, I think that's something that's achievable, but like I think it should be done. And I think it serves both sides um, on the long run. But I don't see any serious discussion about that. You hear something?
Somebody's sneaking behind you there.
No, it's my wife. She got caught.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And like, I think, it's, you mentioned something in there that I kind of think is interesting, right? You mentioned like liberal versus conservative, or, both sides, or this judge was more liberal, this judge was more conservative. I think that people have moved away from even that. Like, I feel like most people don't even really know what a liberal or a conservative is anymore, because everything is in the frame of Republican and Democrat. And that's like where people are stuck on. But it's like being conservative doesn't mean you have to follow the Republican Party. Like the Republican Party is a group that tends to be conservative. But like I'm trying to think of how to explain I like, it makes sense in my head, but I'm trying to explain it in like a different, like, in other words, people see like Republican and they're like, oh, this is my guy, regardless of what his ideals actually are. And like they probably are more conservative, but it's not like,
Probably, but nowadays Trump has kind of skewed everything, because in the past there's been a more libertarian based Republicans were supposed to be for small government.
well, yeah, that's another huge one. Yeah, Republicans
That's kind of
traditionally
gone.
were. Um,
Well,
but
small government's okay if it means people making billions of dollars, but if it means like protecting people's rights, no.
well, you can't like libertarianism is essentially impossible. It's a great idea, but you can't do it in a capitalist society. You can't. And we're seeing why right now, because Donald Trump is doing exactly what would happen, which is the rich people will get ultra rich and the poor people will get poor, and that's it. There's no way to protect them. There's no way to do anything. I mean,
It's like on the economic side, you mean
yeah,
like economically, but like civil rights wise is, yeah, the Bill of Rights is just like it's not even about the laws. It's about like, what is it about? It's about like the mechanisms to enforce those laws, to make sure there's a real law, have basically, there's been a stress. Trump is a stress test, and the test has proven positive to break it. The
yeah,
rules
yeah, it failed.
system has failed.
Well, that's exactly like, how many things has he just done? And it's like, well, the president can't really do it, but he did it. He just did it. And nobody stops
Yeah.
him. Nobody stops him. Nobody checks it. Nobody does anything. It just happens. And it's like, it's not supposed to happen. And exactly, it's not about, and that's kind of my point. Like, it's not about Republican or Democrat. It shouldn't be. Like, you shouldn't care what party someone is from. That's not it. You can care about what ideals that they hold, but them just having an R or a D next to their name doesn't make them unique in any real way. It's more about what they actually believe and what they actually follow and what they actually stand for. And like, I don't know, I just feel like the people that go along with what Donald Trump is doing, kind of like what you mentioned before, like the sycophant adjacent people that just don't do anything. To me, it's a major problem. I think it's something that needs to be addressed, because all of the mechanisms should be there to stop Donald Trump from doing what he's doing, but they're all failing. None of them are working.
Yeah. So what do you think the Democrats could do?
It's funny. I think I said this to you before. I think that even if the Democrats take over, if they tried to say like impeach him, I feel like that might actually be a mistake, because he does exceptionally well when he's playing the victim. So like, I feel like if they try to impeach him, that may cause some other kind of a problem where he's like, oh, look, they're, going after me or whatever. I don't even know. I don't even know what to expect anymore. I really don't.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
That's okay.
hopefully, right, if they are able to take over the House and they are able to take over the Senate, hopefully they can at least rein some of this in. But
Yeah, I think that they, take it on a day by day, not being so doomsday, but I think, there was a Trump first term and then he lost to Biden. And although Joe Biden was asleep the whole time, those 4 years, I mean, at least it was less stressful. It was less like it was less, I mean, just everything's so doomy under like everything that I see, I don't see any positives about what's going on. Like what do we have to look forward to for our country? Like get everything's going up price wise, and I don't I even feel like it's affecting like the quality of like entertainment. Like, you know, you think about movies and shows, like you talk about like the good guys and the bad guys, and like no, it's just like there's no doubt about it that the good guys are in the descendancy. Like there's this new world order where might makes right, and there's just no moral compass to anything. It's like there's not even an attempt to do what's right. Like it's disgusting.
yeah, you're right. There is no. It's just, I'm gonna do whatever I want, and because I can. I think it was like going back. I think I remember sending you, or I either sent you the picture, we talked about it. It was like right in the beginning of Trump's new presidency, when he was like doing the back and forth. It was about where they were going to send. They had like a bunch of undocumented immigrants, right? And they put them on a plane somewhere. I forget exactly where the plane was going.
Africa maybe? Oh,
And
or was it to Venezuela
it may have been
or El
Venezuela.
Salvador?
I don't remember, but the president of wherever it was tried to say like, no, we're not going to take the plane, and then Trump like threatened them or something, and then they ended up accepting it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is that after Trump got his way, he posted a picture on like Truth Social. It was like another AI photo of like him as like a gangster, and it said, fuck around and find out. And
Yeah.
I like, even stuff like that. It's like, how can you sit there and like glorify that type of leadership? Like, I agree.
What an example you're setting for children.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Or never mind children, anybody. This is the president of the United States that's doing this. What example are you setting for anyone? And how can you expect to hold anybody to any kind of a standard if that's what the president of the United States is doing? It's just like, I don't know. I just think it's crazy. I don't get it. I really don't understand it. And I don't understand why people how people can support that. Like, it's just, do you enjoy, not you, but like people that like that? Do you just enjoy being a bully? Like, do you think that's what America stands for? When you grew up and you learned about, the United States, the lesson that you took out of it was that the United States bullies people and that we're the best country because we push other people around? That's not the
Yeah,
lesson that I learned. I don't remember learning that. I learned that
I think
we stood up to the people that were pushing other people around, and that's what made us special, you know?
yeah, I think some people would say, well, that's just who Trump is. He's a colorful character and he's immature and yeah, he says stupid things, but at the end of the day, look at the economy. He's standing up for American workers and I think initially, if I correct me if I'm wrong, but before at the onset of the second Trump administration, you were somewhat down the middle in terms of like immigration. Like you believed that there should be, and maybe you still do, that there should be enforced like relatively robust enforcement of the immigration laws for against undocumented immigrants, right?
So my belief, and it still is that the laws that currently exist should be correctly enforced because
Right.
they weren't. I mean, they weren't, or at least it seemed like they weren't. Um, I was not for the one creation of all kinds of new laws that don't make any sense, and two, the ignoring of those laws.
And the U.S. Constitution, they ignore it. Yeah,
Right. Like
basically,
in other words, if somebody has a pending case, right? Like they came to this country, let's even say came undocumented, right? Or they overstayed their visa or whatever. But then they sought an attorney, they began a case in court to be heard about whether or not they could stay. And they have that case pending. There's no reason why they need to be removed right now. If they have, let them be heard, let their case be heard, you know what I'm saying? Like let the process work. I don't see any problem with that. There's a reason why the process exists, you know?
yeah.
And
And then they put it on like overdrive, like I showed, like
right.
the detaining like 85-year-old French woman, and you can't even begin to start. But basically, what I think the American public has largely been defrauded in terms of what immigration enforcement because the premise was that we're going to enforce the laws and remove people who are mostly dangerous criminals and much a more mild, but in reality what's happened is there's just been a systematic attempt to eliminate as much as possible legally or illegally the legal pathways for immigrants to stay in the United States, to come to the United States, and also just a systematic ignorance of or violation of the U.S. Constitution, of due process. The list goes on and on and on, and some of it's just downright cruel, like that article you sent me about the woman. I mean, I had there was a woman from Honduras who was interviewed by the New York Times, and she said that came to the United States across the border because she wanted her unborn baby to have U.S. citizenship, right? And I think, although I think that's not the general, I don't think that's representative of most people who come to the United States illegally, because if you think about it, somebody who's pregnant going on a trip from Honduras across Mexico, which is, I know people that have done the trip. It's a very dangerous trip.
Especially for a pregnant
Subject,
woman.
you have to basically have to cross through like how many tolls, like they have to pay all these like extortion fee, not extortion fees, I call them bribes, but not just to the government of Mexico, but to cartels. So anyway, the person the that article shows that in the past the federal government was pretty consistent. When somebody was pregnant and they crossed the border illegally, the policy was to just parole them out on humanitarian parole, keep them in deportation proceedings, because the risk to the mother and the baby to detain them, it's so much greater. I mean, it's just so cruel. What happened to that woman and that baby was cruel.
Yeah, I
Forget the
agree.
policy. Forget the policy. I think the woman gave birth in less than 24 hours afterwards. ICE took her from the baby and put her back in detention. What was the benefit? Like to send a message? I mean, there's still a baby. That baby could be irrevocably harmed. And we see this across the board, like this unmatched cruelty that I think if most Americans saw the effects of that cruelty firsthand, that they couldn't stomach. Because there's this, especially I think in the age of social media, um, the doom scrolling, people don't pay attention. There's this huge dehumanization. People don't even realize what's going on. They're in their own worlds, they're disassociated. And if that continues, that's another thing. Like I sometimes I want to just like throw my phone out the window. It's just like it keeps on dragging me back into like some scrolling adventure, like because there's crazy things going on, but sometimes you just have to sit down and read like a paper copy and kind of focus on the human story behind something. And I think it would go a long way. I mean, you talk about politics this or politics that, but at the end of the day, I think it's important for Americans to look at every issue and have a strong emphasis on the individual humans who are affected, because that's the best way to do it. Instead of when you disconnect the humanity from it, the consequences are catastrophic and it can lead to death and really severe consequences. For example, I was speaking to some people that I know. I won't say in what agency or anything like that, but the law enforcement. And currently, given that currently, for people that don't know, ICE has been indiscriminate in its enforcement for the most part. Everyone has fear, even if it has died down a bit since Minnesota. Everyone is terrified to go to anywhere where ICE could be. It's just so. In terms of public safety, for example, what happens when an undocumented or illegal immigrant, depending on, doesn't matter what you use, they're a person who doesn't have immigration status. Um, it was a victim of a rape or other serious crime, right? And law enforcement, the local police want to arrest the perpetrator, who could be a U.S. citizen, it could be an undocumented, who knows, but
Right.
they're a danger to the community. Now, law enforcement is going to have a much more difficult time getting cooperation from victims and other witnesses because they're going to fear that they're going to be detained and deported, and rightfully so in many cases. I know that because it's actually quite alarming. I was sitting in a immigration hearing. It was kind of a scheduling hearing for a bunch of cases on a
Right.
juvenile docket out of Dallas, Texas. And I don't know if I told you about this, what I saw. So this is a very tough court, and the judge was going through everyone was getting ordered removed, and then this case came up, and the attorney on the case said that her client, I think it was a young juvenile minor, had a pending U visa, and a U visa is something that it's a law that says that people that are victims of serious crimes like rape, murder, or felony assault, that they can remain and eventually get permanent residency in the United States. There's a huge backlog. There's been like, I think there's a 5-year wait just for like an initial determination whether you might get granted, right?
Right.
Protection from deportation. This case, I don't know specifically what happened to this victim, but the judge, who's a very conservative judge, apparently did see the details of the case, and she said on the public record that, look, this girl suffered some serious harm, and this is what the U visa was designed for, to protect people like this. And then the attorney's like, what do you, she said, what do you want, to the attorney for this child? Said, I would like to get an adjournment so that I can get this other agency to make an initial determination. And so actively, the federal government is trying to deport this victim of a serious crime.
Right.
It's probably some serious sexual crime. But then the immigration judge says, well, you better get on it because I can't give you much time. So if this attorney doesn't get like hit the lottery of getting a quick decision, this judge is willing to order this victim of a serious crime removed. And it's like, fuck, are you like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like,
Why? Yeah. Why?
and then that's just the judge. And then you have the ICE attorney They didn't say anything, and they could easily say, "Well, no, I don't care. We can." They could. The judge could. The ICE lawyer could have said to the girls' lawyers, "Look, we're gonna hold this case on pause until we get a decision." No, it's just a total. What I see it as, and now I didn't really speak about it too at length. I did mention it to a couple reporters, but it's just a complete lack of humanity, a lack of courage. You know, it's disgusting. Like, what is wrong with you? If you're that worried about keeping your job that you're gonna let like somebody who's the victim of serious crime, you're gonna actually let them get ordered deported. And I think that's happening across the country at a staggering rate that we haven't seen before. Um, and keep in mind that in previous administrations, even under the first Trump administration, a lot of judges and ICE lawyers would they would just this would be an easy case to close. You would not go forward on this case. Close it. And now what's happening, and this goes into the same thing they were talking about the like serious dismantling of um, the rule of law, is that the Trump administration has wholesale fought. They've gone through, I think, apparently they've gone through their statistics, and I think if somebody doesn't hit a certain metric in terms of how much they deny cases, they will fire the judge without cause. Like they won't even give you an explanation. Some of these judges have been immigration judges for 5, 10, 15 years. And there's nothing wrong with their performance, just that they're not doing what the Trump government wants, which
Right.
is well, oftentimes
Against the
violating
law.
the law.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going on across the board, like, and it's like these kind of things people have to know about, but how to tell them about it, I don't know. It's like maybe we could have a guest client sometime.
Well, I think it's hard because I think a lot of, you even have Donald Trump, it's straight from the top. Like you mentioned the dehumanization. I mean, you even have Donald Trump constantly talking about how they're all rapists and murderers and they're eating your dogs and cats and like all of this nonsense. And so it's very easy for people to like lose sight of what it actually is. Like, are there murderers and rapists who are here as undocumented immigrants? Yeah, sure. Is it the majority of them? No, no, it
You know
isn't.
what the answer to that is, and do you think about people don't even mention this because like, I don't have anything against deporting on its like morally. I'm not morally against deportation, but if you think about someone who's a truly dangerous individual, right? What's the best way to protect society from that dangerous individual? Imprisonment, and thereafter close monitoring if there's a limit to how long they can be imprisoned, which I think is pretty frequent with like sex-based crimes, which is disturbing in its own right. But it's imprisonment and close supervision. So, and I know this might be a taboo subject. I guess definitely taboo in terms of like congressional people speaking about it, but I've thought about it sometimes. And but is it safest to like somebody who committed murder or committed sexual abuse of a child? Is it safer for the American public to deport them, where to a country like Honduras or El Salvador, Guatemala or Venezuela or wherever, where they will be completely free to go under the radar or come back and enter the United States illegally without detection
Again,
and
yeah,
then continue to commit their crimes? I think on a purely merit based, like what's the safest way? I think it's to lock them up, put them in prison, and as long as possible. And then thereafter, um, I don't have an issue with them being deported, but there is a risk to that too. There's no thought about what happens after someone like that's deported. Like, what are they going to do when they get to their home country? Um, and likely they're going to commit more crimes. So it's all like an illusion. It's all like a lot of it's just
yeah. It's just garbage. What's the
it's just
same? Like
garbage.
they're
So
perfectly happy removing people that came here as children. They came here, they were 3, 4 years old, 5 years old, whatever. Now they're 20 something. It's like, oh, well, we're going to send you, you came with your parents, but now we want to send you back to wherever because that's where you're from. So, no, their entire life is here. Like they're American. Like for all intents and purposes, they're American. They grew up here. That this is their life.
Yeah,
This is
and then some that thing still survived America. It's miraculous that DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, is still more or less alive. But like a lot of people say, well, the law is the law, and we need to enforce the law. But the reality is, you cannot. There are limits to how much you can enforce the law because of resources. So, like right now, what's going on is just indiscriminate. Well, I won't say that because there's a lot of people don't understand how ICE operates. Like there's field offices for like New York, New England, California, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Texas. So I think a lot of field offices, like they still want to go about focusing on people with final deportation orders and like serious criminal issues. But at the top, it's all about go after everyone,
yeah,
right?
just everyone get them all
So,
out and don't
and
let any
that
more.
that that doesn't actually make us safer because going after people that are dangerous is much more resource intensive, and it doesn't take into account any of the public safety concerns about victims of crimes. Doesn't take into account basic human decency. Like there has to be discretion on some cases. Like, you know, if there's an 85-year-old person that overstayed her visa by 3 months, maybe don't put them in prison
Yeah,
so they can die.
yeah, exactly. Just don't care. It
So
doesn't matter.
yeah,
Yeah, it's. I agree, and I think kind of go back to how you began this segment here with they the administration deceived the American people. I think that's really the best way to put it. But I think a lot of people don't care. See, like when I did not want Donald Trump to win. I didn't vote, but I didn't want him to be the president. I thought him becoming the president would be an awful circumstance because I hated what he did the first time. I hated how he was talking at the end. I hated the fact that he seemed to have a very difficult time giving up his presidency. All of these things troubled me a lot. So I really didn't want him to become the president again. When he was elected, I'm of the mindset that regardless of who the president is going to be, I hope they do a good job because I care about my country. So, I didn't want Donald Trump to win, but when he got in, I was like, all right, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to hate on it. I hope he does a good job and hopefully he can do something good. I did not expect it to go at all the way that it did. And I think I said this to you before, like a lot of the stuff that he says, I feel like there's like a sliver of like some truth in it or like some good part in it. Like I said, I think it's fair to have a discussion about the system of immigration and, possible ways that it's being exploited or possible ways that people take advantage of it or whatever. And if you want to reshape that a little bit and change, I'm open to that discussion, but that's not what he's doing. He took something that was maybe an issue and had some slight tweaks that needed to be made to it, and he's completely like he's got like a response of like level 2 was maybe necessary, and he's responding with like a 10, and it's totally out of proportion. It's not even remotely associated with what needs to be done or what should be done or what could be done. And to make matters worse, tying back into what we were saying before, he's doing it without any kind of check, without any kind of debate, without any kind of anything. It's just, well, this is what I want to do, so I'm just going to do it. That's it.
yeah, and they did that with their executive order on birthright citizenship. Like he really was he effectively that was like a bold attack, right? And the fact that it's at this point where like the Supreme Court actually heard the arguments on the merits. I think one of the justices, Alito, I think he's really the definition of an activist judge. Um, might be like the one judge that votes in favor, but like they're gonna really take seriously like upholding an executive order that intent like explicitly and unapologetically overturns statutory, constitutional, and like over 100 years of interpret like the law. How like that's been the law. They're saying, oh look, you've got it wrong for over 100 years. And we want an exec, not a congressional, not a constitutional amendment, not a congressional
Yeah, not a law
law
or an
passed by
attempted
Congress,
law. Yeah.
an executive order overturning hundreds of years precedent, and even apart from the merits, like okay, so basically it comes down to the U.S. The 14th Amendment says all persons born in the United States, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States, and they want even assuming that they would that their interpretation is correct, do an executive order. So okay, let's say the Supreme Court says, okay, this executive order is correct, and we're going to allow it to go into effect, right? And then then the next presidential administration comes through and they reverses that with another executive order. Like what
Or
happens to all like the millions of you like babies in between? Like it's just so outrageous that they even took this case up for certiorari in the first place.
or
They should
even
have left it into the lower courts.
even take it the next step. Now a precedent is established that a president can create, change any law he wants without Congress. He could just make an executive order and then demand that the Supreme Court hear the
And the
merits.
fact that the Supreme Court took up the case in the first place is outrageous to
Yeah.
me. Like, imagine you and me, like we have a lawsuit for whatever reason, and we're like, we lose at the district court, we lose at the appellate court. The guy, Supreme Court, can you please? It's an emergency. I'm gonna get no, no. The executive branch is VIP. That pisses me off. Like
Yeah, it's stupid.
it's like it's this is not a that's not democracy. That's a oligarchy where the Supreme Court gives this really like VIP treatment to this specific president. Like, you believe that the Supreme Court would entertain as many emergency requests if it came from a Biden or an Obama administration? Absolutely not.
Why
And I
so
think
why do you think that that is? Because theoretically there's no, like, Trump can't really do anything to any of them, right? Like there's nothing he can do to endanger them. So what is their
yeah,
motivation?
no, I think that these a lot of these judges. I think depends on who you're talking about, like versus Alito versus Roberts. I think there's a little bit of a different ideological mindset, and even with respect to the newer ones with Kavanaugh, Justice Barrett, and um, Justice Gorsuch. But I think all in all, that what they all have in common is that they really do, in general, like to defer. I think they are ideological to a large. They're all ideological. Every justice in some way, but I think that this is like their opportunity to like fulfill certain deeply held beliefs, um, or just it reflects their worldview, whether it's subconscious or not. So it's not a surprise that this specific Supreme Court has been particularly favorable to the Trump administration when it comes to rights of people that are not white, like the case about the racial profiling, the birthright citizenship case. Like they're not really standing up for the rights of American people. They're giving the executive branch a lot more power. Uh, it's like it's called the unitary executive theory, where they just think the executive should have a lot of power. So I think that's the most thing I can understand is that they really think that the executive branch should be able to do what it wants to do for the most part, with limited exceptions. And because their ideological mindset tends to be in alliance, like with this government, that they're likely to do it. And that's the thing about something like the shadow docket that really should be eliminated, because that kind of gives the justices an ability to act in secret. They don't have to actually stand behind their decisions. And if you look at that case in California, so we should get more polished and look up these cases so I can cite them correctly. But that case, there was a concurring opinion by John Kavanaugh. I highly recommend you read it full, but it was, if you compare, so there was no majority decision. There's just one of the justices that decided that, yeah, we should allow to racially profile. He wrote some explanation, and it was just all over the place. He's like, oh, yeah, it's not a big deal that they completely beat the shit out of a U.S. citizen the reality is there's illegal immigrants. There's a lot of illegal immigrants in California, and it's just obvious that you can use those things, but they're just so disconnected, and they
Yeah.
believe that they should be able to enforce the immigration law. That's their. I think there was indication from Kavanaugh's right opinion that he believed that they should be able to enforce the immigration laws. Like that, he kind of revealed his political opinion on that, and he kind of poo-pooed and minimized the consequences of you know massive systematic constitutional violations of U.S. citizens who are not white or who don't speak English without an accent or who work in blue collar jobs that a lot of other immigrants work in. So there's just this total disregard for people that are like not like them because they're definitely not like they're all white. They're not even the ones that aren't white in the Supreme Court. They're just this rarefied elite, educated at Yale, Harvard.
Right.
Um, so they're just disconnected from reality and they let this stuff go. But they're able to do this, I think, because they don't have to stand behind their decision. They don't have to take time. They should allow if the evidence comes out, a lot of these decisions I think would come down differently. So I can't explain it, but if you look at the dissents of Sotomayor, like they're becoming increasingly caustic. Like really, like this is they've actually the Sotomayor and Justice Jackson, that's her name. Why am I getting that wrong? They've specifically said that like this is an existential threat to like the rule of law in the United States. And people write it off. They're liberal justices, right? But they're still Supreme Court justices, and it's pretty rare that they'll say things so out there.
Yeah.
So,
So harsh.
so it's just unacceptable. It's like I I don't care what the actual decision is, but they should definitely allow. They should have to write a full decision. They shouldn't allow to skip the lower courts, and there should be limits on like these emergencies. Like where's the equality? Why does the government executive branch get to hear whatever they want to hear when they hear it? Oh, because they're so important. Their policy is so important. How is that executive order for the birthright citizenship so important? Like it was so obvious. Like these district court judges were laughing it out. This is so unconstitutional. You're out of your mind. And they basically legitimized it. I mean, because they're. I mean, if you think about what is the Supreme Court, it's like what 9 human beings, 9 justices, and it doesn't take much for them to screw up and start a downward spiral because there's no one else watching them. Like nobody can do anything to rein them in.
Scary, actually.
Yeah.
It
On that
is.
note, yeah, vote to write to your congressman asking for an amendment of the Constitution to require. Okay, this is a really reasonable ask. Every time the Supreme Court makes a decision, they should be required under the U.S. Constitution to write a written decision supporting their decision based on the facts and the legal arguments presented before them. They should not be able to write a one sentence decision that has real consequences on real people. That's just it. Like, otherwise, what are they're not legitimate. That's not legitimate in my mind. You can't just change the law without telling us why.
Well, we also need to write to our congressman to not forget about the Epstein files
Oh yeah,
because
that's another thing. Like,
that is also continuously getting lost as Donald Trump does more and more crazy things every single day.
I
No,
haven't heard anything about that recently.
nope.
Where's Thomas Massey? I mean, to be fair, like they literally did the biggest distraction possible and launched a war on Iran that has had basically put up huge risks to everyone economically. Like the oil price is out of control, inflation's going to go up. Like these are serious. We don't. The every day like the stock market. I mean, it's amazing. This it just doesn't it seem to you like the stock market, like, it's just so like they just, oh, the stocks go up and down based on like how the negotiations. Trump has effectively co-opted the stock market. Like he can manipulate it. Like, isn't it like insider trading? Maybe this is what it is. Maybe he's just trying to like play the system and make all these bets on Kalshi, and because his
I
actual comments have a direct effect on the stock market
Yeah,
and the oil prices and other who God knows what else.
the prediction markets are the huge one. Huge.
Yeah, so maybe that's what it is because it's been particularly like all over the place. Like what do you call it? Like whiplash. Whiplash. It's like today we're gonna wipe out the Iranian civilization. Tomorrow we're gonna have a ceasefire. We're gonna send JD Vance to Istanbul, and maybe Iran's going to come, and we have this. Iran says 5 years, 20 years. They'll pause their enrichment for 5 years, and U.S. says 20 years, and blah 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 blah. And like it's like, who is the bad? I mean, Iran has been a supporter of terrorist attacks and everything like that. They are oppressive to their own people, from what I know, very repressive. I mean, you can look at what they say, and they're willing to attack civilians, but so are we.
Yep.
Um, because when you drop bombs in an urban area like Tehran, you're killing civilians. I guess I kind of feel like I'm kind of a little bit complicit in that because when I see, like, oh, well, it's war, there's collateral consequences, but this is not where a country attacked us directly, like conventionally. And you're dropping these giant bombs in cities, and kids are dying, and that should have consequences. There should be justice for those kids. There's no like, what do you think if God was up there, God's law, and he's saying everyone, everyone's God's children, right? And do you think that it's a good defense to say, well, war is complicated, and we had to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon at some unspecified time in the future,
Well, that's
and therefore it was justified to bomb, because that's, you look at the definition of murder, right? In general, it's like one of the more common ones is reckless disregard for human life. So like if I threw a grenade, like, look, let's say there was like a gunman, like in a mall or something, and I have a grenade, and it's a busy mall, and this guy's opening fire, and I throw a grenade at the gunman, like, and I kill like 10 people, like, I'm going to be prosecuted, and probably rightfully so, for murder, because good intentions I had, I think that's a pretty good analogy.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Whatever good intentions I had, I knew or should have known that was going to kill like five other people.
Well,
So,
it's so funny you just mentioned that because it reminded me of something, right? This whole idea, and people already forgot this, I think, because of how fast everything is going. Just like we were saying the other day, we forgot about the boats that Donald Trump was blowing up in the middle of the ocean. But last year, right? Last year, it was an imminent threat. Iran was about to get nuclear weapons. We had to take action. So we bombed their facilities in the mountains. And then Donald Trump announced that now the Iranian nuclear production was obliterated. They would never be able to get nuclear weapons because we obliterated their nuclear capabilities. But now it's 6 months later, and we have to go to war with them because they're developing nuclear weapons again. Didn't we just stop them from doing that 6 months ago?
bullshit. And
Like,
there's people that
it's just
it's totally bullshit.
it's complete nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. It makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. There's no real justification. There's no thought. It's just one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and it just never stops.
I
And
think they really thought they were going to knock them out and like force an implosion of the government. Like, but
I
it
think,
was reckless because they had
yeah, it
no
was
idea,
stupid.
they had no facts.
Yeah, it was very stupid.
But
And like you said, like
yeah,
I do think that collateral damage in war is sadly something that happens, but much like you said, this war was not there's no justification for it. We're not going to war because, we are trying to do something meaningful. It's just garbage. Not to mention the fact that even if you go by, hey, we're doing this to save the people of Iran, which is what they like to say, we're saving the people of Iran from their government. Well, if that's true, then the people of even in your framework, the people of Iran are victims. So if you're indiscriminately bombing cities, or even just not carefully enough bombing cities and hitting girls' schools and blowing up children and all this other thing, then you're hurting the victims. You're not hurting members of this government that are your enemy, or people that are your enemy. These are victims that you claim to be attempting to free, that instead you're directly killing. It just,
Yeah, and they continue like they continue to double down like with this whole blockade thing. I feel like it's not working. I think it's like it's making it worse because what's clear to me was, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert in Iran, but it's clear over the course of these war that they really hate the United States, like the actual armed forces there, and they're really motivated. Like they've been shooting and back and continuously, despite like everyone getting killed. Like how many senior leaders have been killed, and they continue to fight. So clearly, fear is not really a big issue. So like, you think the blockade's gonna, and of course they don't care that much for their own people, but
well, I think,
y-
I think part of the problem is actually Donald Trump, and I'll explain why. If you, and I know people say he was being hyperbolic or whatever, but if you tell people that you are going to eradicate their civilization, you're going to wipe them off the face of the earth, what choice do they have other than fight? Like, it's great to be, oh, you have to be unpredictable and you have to be crazy. Okay, yeah, fine. Sometimes that can work as a negotiation strategy, but if your strategy is to just be crazy and to just be like, yes, we are going to kill you to the last person, and you demonstrate that you're willing to do that, why would those people capitulate to you? Why would they do that? Because you obviously don't care about them. You don't care about their well-being. You don't care about anything about them. Why would they submit to you? Why would they give you what you want? You can't have that. You can't demonstrate that mentality. You can't have that mentality, because if you push somebody into a corner like that where you are genuinely threatening their life, why would they negotiate with you at that point? Like, why would they believe you or trust you or want to be in that position? It's kind of like, going back to like World War II. There was all the thoughts of like, oh well, if we carpet bomb these cities and we just kill all these people, then they'll be like, oh hey, we don't want to fight anymore. But in both England, right, when Germany tried it, and in Germany when England tried it and we tried it, it had the opposite effect. Bombing all the cities and killing all those people just caused the people to have more solidarity, because it's like, well, these people are trying to wipe us off the face of the earth. So yeah, sure, Hitler's bad and our government sucks right now, but
yeah, but you just killed
it's
my
it's
family.
but it's better than being dead, right? So I like, it doesn't work. You have to present a better alternative if you want the people to follow you. You can't make it worse,
I don't think Trump has a better alternative because he doesn't care about anything but himself. So it's
Very
like,
true.
and even like, let's say they come to a deal, right? Iran and the United States, like, okay, but like, violence has like when there's massive violence and massive death, it has like these unforeseen consequences in the future. There's so much bad will among probably a lot of normal Iranians, but also within the armed forces where they've lost family or whatever. Like going forward, like I mean, I don't think you can actually foresee like the various potential consequences, but it could rise to a little spike in terrorist attacks from all sorts of different groups. I mean, I think that's where, well, like ISIS kind of rose up as a part. I think it rose up in part because of the power vacuum, but also because there was a lot of people with access to ground because they lost family in Iraq and
Yeah,
Syria.
sure.
Due to, I mean, whether it was the United States, um, I don't know how many civilians we killed in Iraq.
I'm not
The
sure.
collateral damage was a
I'm
lot.
sure it was a lot. Yeah.
And then whatever happened in Syria. And so these this violence has violent delights have violent ends, and this is going to continue to haunt us for many years. I think we're just at the beginning, and um, I'm sure there will be some kind of agreement because it looks like Trump is really wanting one because he wants the Strait of Hormuz open. But I don't know from Iran's perspective what they're going to do because their country's destroyed.
Well, here's the other thing, right? This is the thing that's, I'm telling you right now, I'm calling it, and I'm telling you that when it happens, it's going to piss me off. Because what's going to happen is Donald Trump is going to get some kind of a peace deal, ultimately, right? And the Strait of Hormuz will be open, and he will claim that as a victory. He'll be like, look, I got the Strait of Hormuz open, and we made peace with Iran. And it's going to piss me off because the only reason we needed the Strait of Hormuz opened and we needed peace with Iran is because he went to war with Iran. There was no objective here. There was no objective that was met. There was no, it wasn't like, hey, we want to remove the Ayatollah. Okay, objective complete. No, there was no objective. They just bombed it because Israel was bombing. That's it. Hey, that's it. We're just going to do this. We're going to do this thing. We have no strategic objective. We have no military objective. We have nothing. There's no purpose. We're just going to come up with a purpose after the fact. And now the purpose has become, we need to get the Strait of Hormuz open. But that wouldn't be a purpose if you didn't start the conflict in the first place.
Yeah.
And now, once everything is done, is Israel going to be happy with whatever? Are they going to continue to bomb Lebanon? Are they going to continue to try to go after Iran? Because I already know they're going to keep saying that Iran can't have nuclear weapons. It can't have nuclear weapons.
Or I think they want to get rid of their ballistic missile capabilities too, because that's been their ballistic missile capability and the drone capabilities have been pretty effective. No, I mean sometimes effective in harming Israel and neighboring Gulf nations. But is it realistic to really like a nation the size of Iran? Is it realistic to eliminate their ballistic missile capabilities? I don't think so. I mean, ballistic missiles aren't particularly complicated. I mean, it's not that hard. They have the manufacturing base, they have the knowledge. Unless you kill everyone or effectively everyone, they're going to be able to rebuild their nuclear missiles, right?
Well, probably, not to mention the fact that
Not the nuclear missiles, their ballistic
but
missiles, the traditional.
even if you did kill everybody, they could very easily get new people. I mean, I'm sure.
Or benefit Russia or China.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm sure there is some third party that's assisting them, at least in some way. How much, I don't know, but
We did with Ukraine. It's not like much different, but although no, it is different because Ukraine is defending against the Russian invasion, but Iran is sort of defending. Wait, is Iran defending against the U.S. invasion? Yeah. So
yeah, they kind of are.
now that there's no moral, I mean, you can't. There's no moral. I think that's what China and Russia are probably licking their lips because they kind of any pretext to the moral superiority is gone. So yeah, it's a circular waste of money. They just wanted to play war games. That's what it seems like at the end of the day. They wanted to play war games. And then, of course, there's a lot of people that are like really hate Iran. They've wanted to destroy them for many reasons, but I think people are just so dumb. They don't realize you can't bomb your way out of problems. It causes you on just a hole and hole. I think it give me one example where, especially with respect to the Middle East, where bombing your way out of a problem worked.
Nope, not one.
Not Afghanistan. Afghanistan's like it was before
Maybe even worse.
9/11, and then Iraq. I don't even pay attention to Iraq anymore. But
Iraq is doing okay, actually. The last I checked, which was earlier this year, I think I was looking at it. They still have some form of like a republic government, so they're doing, I guess, all right comparatively.
At a very high cost. But like and I don't know. It just if you look at some places like Syria, um, like that. I mean, I think there's a difference between internal armed conflict, but like when you have something external like that, like the United States, like we've never really had a successful like nation building experience. I can't think of any.
South Korea is pretty much the only one I can think of.
Well, yeah, after they split it to the north and the south, but I think I mean, I think it depends on like situations that are already there, like the people
Yeah, the people need to accept it. That's the
accept
biggest.
it, right?
Yeah, that's the
And
biggest key.
I think that's the biggest key with Iran is that that's not they're not like what like there's like I read in the New York Times this weekend, like 20% are really pro government, pro Ayatollah, the other are a mix, but like a lot of the oppositions are part of extremist groups too, like other types of extremist groups. So anyway, it's a mess,
Yeah.
but that does give us some insight into like so there really is no solution. So I don't know how these stock market analysts make these decisions. They're just like, let's just fucking go with it. Like maybe we're bullish on the like it's just so arbitrary and capricious how they're making the decisions on selling in. There cannot be any like legitimate analysis because it's all based on Trump and he's just out of control. He doesn't say anything with any rhyme or reason.
No, a lot of it is just based on what he says. But there's definitely insider trading going on to some extent. I mean, there's like every time Trump does something, like usually like 15 minutes before he makes whatever announcement, there's like massive sell-offs and stuff of different things. It's definitely suspicious. Let's put it that
Yeah,
way.
I think I maybe go to check out some options in living in Canada or anywhere else sometime soon. Because if it continues at this rate, you know, they're going after, they're going after like these higher profile political opponents. But like, what happens when it starts going down? If there does become a serious resistance, there's nothing stopping the federal government from going after people like you or me. If we present a threat to them, and people like you or me, if we're targeted by the federal government like that, we're in serious trouble
Oh
because
yeah, we'll
they
disappear.
require like these one of the reasons like they've been unsuccessful is because who their targets have been like someone like James Comey, Letitia James, John Brennan, like they have serious power from like personal connections and also just to get really good lawyers. So most people can't afford those lawyers. We're talking about $100,000. So um, yeah, but we can. I'm going to continue on my end. I guess I do have a unique advantage is that I can fight directly in some respects, but God, it's tiring. I don't even think it's worth it.
I mean, the only thing we can do is just hope that it gets better, and that's
I
really
mean,
it.
and continue to speak about. I mean, I think a lot of people don't speak about it enough. Like they don't want to talk Like I think it's kind of. I understand nobody wants to talk politics, but like it's your country and it's affecting you. So I think there should be more civic engagement, civil engagement.
I think that's really the problem. Is it's very difficult to talk about politics with most people because of the tribalism. And so most people, they just hear you say one thing. It's like they'll hear like trigger words and then they just decide whether they hate you or they like you. And then the entire rest of that conversation is just based off that. Like there's no nuance. There's no, you know, it's
Yeah, like
stupid.
I couldn't speak to some people in my like family about it. Just I wasn't even going to show them the link to the podcast. Or try to think, you know, who else maybe you know who we should reach out to? Mr. Lapp.
I wonder if he's still teaching.
I don't know how old he would be at this point. He was younger than our parents, I think,
Yeah, he was
but
young. He was younger, but
maybe he's like 10. He's in his late 20s, early 30s, so he's probably like in his 50s.
I feel like he probably would remember us, to be honest, because
No, we were pretty remarkable in
yeah,
our class. In
we
terms of, I don't
definitely
even know
stood out.
how, why, like, where did your original conservative points come from? Was that from your
Yeah,
family?
parents, yeah, yeah,
Parents, yeah, mine
parents.
too.
Still,
But
still, they're my
talk,
still the same way. It's sometimes it's frustrating, but
talk radio.
not too much talk radio actually. When I got a little bit older, I listened to it a little bit more, but no, not
Uh,
too much.
I think I could, if I could, that might be an experiment. Maybe I should send my dad a link and see what he thinks about it. Because I think there's a lot of, like, there's a fundamental misunderstanding of a lot of people not specifically people that I know, but like people that identify on the right side. Because a lot of my opinions, like I'm pretty um, there's this tendency that I'm a liberal, or by some people who call me a liberal because I'm such a fierce critic of Donald Trump, which I am. But then at the same time, they don't know how bad how I was called. I filed a request with the U.S. Attorney's Office maybe once or twice, several occasions, to indict President Obama for crimes he committed against my clients. I really did. I went after former Secretary Jay Johnson under President Obama with the Southern District, Texas, and they all. I mean, I think that some of them did respond. They're like, "We're not gonna go. We received your complaint, but we're not gonna. Should try to find those things." Um, I think they still exist. So I've gone after like both governments, and a lot of people misunderstand with personally to me as like a liberal, but I'm more like uh, I have strong opinions on a lot of things, but I really am more, if I was there like an accountability in like not a libertarian, but like a rule of law person where I think it's more like a libertarian. I don't believe in small government. I think there needs to be a lot of checks and balances, but I'm definitely like I despise like being identified with either tribe because it
Same.
eliminates my ability to have ideas based on facts. So hope maybe we could work on getting somebody like that on the program. Who's That'll be hard to sell, but we could try.
I think we could probably do it. Could probably find somebody.
Oh, or we could, it won't be easier is to get somebody on the left leaning end of the spectrum, those people who kind of forgive the crimes of Democrats because there are
Oh
crimes.
yeah,
They've done a lot of. I mean, even look at Joe Biden's pardon of his son Hunter Biden. Like that's just corrupt. I understand. I mean, I would probably do the same thing. If there's one thing that would, um, I mean, it's not even jeopardizing integrity because it was legal, but you can understand why someone would pardon their own son. It's a son, right? But other things that they've done. There's like, for example, President Obama. He was a big fan of using drones to assassinate people in Pakistan, and they've killed children that way. That's comparable to what's happening in Iran. That always went really under the radar. Most people didn't object to it because it was done by, and I think it's because it was done by a Democrat. If a Republican was doing that, I think a lot of people on the left would have gone after it. But only like the diehard activists that really are against that kind of thing stood up to it. But like I think we could get someone like on that on the program, and maybe like make it a lot more entertaining if in a neutral way can present to them, look, this is what like President Obama did. He got away with it. In order for us to hold accountable someone like Trump, we need to be able to hold someone like Obama accountable. That's my thing. That's what I've been throwing about for like the last decade, and most people just ignore me.
yeah. You're right though. It has to be unanimous, and that's the thing is like I hear so much when you speak to people about stuff that anyone is doing, whether it was Trump or Obama or whatever. You always get the whatabouts, right? The whataboutism. That's always what it is. It's like, oh, hey, it's really messed up that Donald Trump did this. Oh, well, Hillary Clinton did blah, 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 blah. I don't care, like Obama, Hillary, whatever. They're not.
Let's address that like
Yeah,
separately and
that's also
independently.
like, why can't we admit that both are bad? Like, why can't we just say both are bad? Why do we have to do this like weird comparison all the time? And it is very
And a lot
frustrating.
of times when people talk about it, there's not enough there's not enough like rules in place to have a valid discussion. Because the whataboutism is particularly annoying because, okay, so we have, what did they say about Hillary with her, was she got hacked or something?
Yeah, some with
The
the
server, the
emails was
server,
like
the
the big
email
thing. Yeah,
server.
yeah.
And then they'll compare, what was the comparison on the right that they'll distract from? Trump's retention of classified documents.
Oh yeah, Mar-a-Lago or
So
whatever it was.
yeah, I mean, actually, I think the answer to something like that is that that particular investigation by Jack Smith was a really bad idea. The classified document portion, at least, is like, fuck, dude, he was the ex-president of the States. He had classified documents in his house. Yeah, technically you might be able to prosecute it, but don't do it unless it's like a legitimate danger. Like the thing about January 6th and the overthrow, that should have just been it, but they went overkill. So like, yeah, but every case should be looked at separately. You don't do like, oh, this is what happened. Oh, wait, let's change the subject. No, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what can be held accountable. And you'll see that the common theme is that no one's ever held accountable.
Yeah, he's not in the
And
government
the
anyway.
one attempt to hold Trump accountable was tainted by political. It was tainted by that tribalism because I can tell you they went after Trump for those things, but nobody went after Obama for what he did to the babies in detention and the drone killings and whatever. Nobody went after him, and almost feel like before Trump there was a gentleman's agreement among, I guess, since Richard Nixon that we're not going to go after you. We're part of the same club. We don't want to go to jail for crimes committed as a president, so we won't do it. And then Trump went overboard, but then the same kind of tribal, um, the one attempt to hold the next president accountable became like a tribal parade, and it was just more like a political partisan thing. Even though technically he should have been, maybe he was guilty of crimes, they were prosecuting him for mostly the wrong crimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Um,
I'm
well, I
gonna
mean,
work on that. I'm gonna find somebody.
well, I was going to say, hopefully, I mean, listen, if we can, as we polish this and we make it more, you know, professional and official, who knows? If we gain any kind of traction down in the future, we could have all kinds of guests. That would be the
I was
ideal.
thinking, yeah, I've been thinking like, 'cause for me personally, like morning, I'm fresher, somewhat fresher. So what like you want to stop recording now?
Oh, yeah, hold on.